The great crystal spires of Nexus Prime reached toward the purple sky, their surfaces gleaming with the light of 3 suns. Deep within the largest tower, the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with activity. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in floating seats arranged in perfect circles, their various forms creating a rainbow of alien life. Ambassador Kethvar of the Hegemony stretched his forearms and clicked his mandibles in amusement. The tall insect-like being had called this emergency session, though he hardly considered it urgent. His compound eyes glittered as he accessed the datapad floating before him. Fellow council members, Kethvar's voice translated smoothly through the chamber's universal communicators. We have discovered another primitive species. They call themselves humans and inhabit a small world they name Earth in the Terra 3 system. A ripple of mild interest passed through the assembly. New species were discovered regularly as the galaxy's borders expanded. Most were simple creatures barely capable of spaceflight. The holographic display in the center of the chamber flickered to life, showing a blue and green world orbiting a yellow star. Images of the planet's inhabitants followed, bipedal creatures with smooth skin and hair covering only their heads. How primitive are we talking? Asked Counselor Zixana from the aquatic zones. Her tentacles swayed gently in her water-filled sphere as she spoke. Stone Age? Early metallurgy? Kethvar's mandibles clicked faster, the equivalent of human laughter. Oh, they're much more advanced than that. They've actually achieved basic spaceflight, and have even managed crude faster-than-light travel. Faster than light? The question came from General Thok of the warrior clans. His rocky, mountain-like form shifted in his reinforced seat. That's concerning. Hardly. Kethvar waved a dismissive arm. Their fastest ships take weeks to travel distances our vessels cover in hours. They use some barbaric method involving the manipulation of space-time itself. Very inefficient. Very dangerous. Typical of a species too stupid to discover proper quantum tunneling. The display showed grainy images of human spacecraft, angular, industrial-looking vessels that seemed crude compared to the elegant, flowing designs favored by galactic civilization. Council members murmured among themselves, pointing out the obvious flaws in human engineering. Look at those engines, laughed Councillor Pex of the Trade Federation. His blue skin shimmered with amusement. They're using controlled nuclear explosions for propulsion. Controlled explosions, like savages making fire. And their weapons, added another voice from the back. Projectile-based systems. They literally throw chunks of metal at their enemies instead of using civilized energy weapons. Kethvar brought up more data with a gesture. Their society is equally primitive. They're divided into nearly 200 separate political entities on a single world. They wage wars over resources, territory, and ideological differences. Most disturbing of all, they seem to glorify violence and conflict in their entertainment. This drew gasps of horror from several council members. The Galactic Union had evolved beyond such barbarism millions of years ago. War was conducted through economic sanctions and diplomatic pressure. Physical violence was reserved only for the most extreme circumstances. However, Kethvar continued, they do show some promise. They've achieved remarkable medical advances. Their computational systems are surprisingly sophisticated, and they've demonstrated considerable adaptability. With proper guidance, they might eventually become useful members of galactic society. As servants, you mean, clarified General Thok. Naturally, they're far too violent and unpredictable to be granted full citizenship rights, but they could serve well in mining operations, dangerous research, or other hazardous occupations where their apparent disregard for safety would be useful. The chamber filled with approving sounds from dozens of different species. It was the natural order of things. Advanced species guided primitive ones toward civilization. The humans would be grateful for the opportunity to serve their betters. Counselor Yilmesh of the Psychic Collective raised one of her 6 ethereal hands. Have they been contacted yet? No, Kethvar replied. Standard protocol requires council approval before first contact with any species capable of interstellar travel. Though given their primitive state, I hardly think it matters. What are you proposing? Asked Counselor Zixana. Kethvar's mandibles spread in what humans might have recognized as a predatory grin. I propose we send a standard diplomatic mission to inform them of their new status as a protectorate species, under galactic law. 3 ships should be more than sufficient. 2 escorts and a command vessel. We'll give them the usual speech about joining galactic civilization, establish trade agreements favorable to the Union, and set up oversight facilities on their major worlds. And if they refuse? General Thok's gravelly voice carried a hint of eagerness. They won't, Kethvar said confidently. What could they possibly do against vessels that can cross their entire solar system in minutes? Against weapons that can crack planets? Against shields that have turned away the fury of stars themselves? They'll see one demonstration of our capabilities and fall to their knees in worship. The assembled beings laughed at the image. It was always the same with primitive species. Initial fear, followed by awe, then desperate gratitude for being allowed to serve. Besides, Kethvar added, their psychology profiles suggest they respond well to shows of superior force. They have a history of surrendering to stronger opponents. It's one of the few intelligent traits they've developed. Counselor Zixana's tentacles curled thoughtfully. What about their defensive capabilities? Even primitive species sometimes have crude weapons. Laughable, Kethvar dismissed the concern. Their most powerful weapons are barely capable of destroying cities. They have no orbital defenses worth mentioning, and their space fleet consists of perhaps a few dozen vessels scattered throughout their system. Our shields could withstand their most powerful weapons indefinitely. The voting process began immediately. It was a formality. The outcome was never in doubt. Primitive species were always inducted as protectorates. It was for their own good, after all. One by one, the representatives cast their votes through mental links, quantum transmissions, or simple vocal declarations. The result was unanimous as expected. Excellent, Kethvar announced as the final vote was recorded. I'll personally lead the diplomatic mission. We'll depart within 2 cycles and should reach the Terra 3 system shortly after. I expect full compliance within 1 standard rotation of our arrival. As the council session ended and representatives began filing out through various exits suited to their forms, conversations buzzed with anticipation. It would be pleasant to have a new species join the galactic community, even in a servile capacity. General Thok paused near Kethvar's station. You seem very confident about this. Why shouldn't I be? Kethvar spread his arms wide. They're primitives with delusions of grandeur. Once they see our ships, our weapons, our technology, they'll realize how foolish resistance would be. It's always the same story, perhaps, Thok rumbled. But remember the Kree incident. Even primitive species can be unpredictable. Kethvar's mandibles clicked dismissively. The Kree had numbers on their side. Billions of fanatical warriors willing to die for their cause. These humans number only in the billions and are divided among themselves. They're not a threat. As General Thok lumbered away, Kethvar turned back to the holographic display showing human civilization. Cities glittered on the night side of their world like scattered jewels. It would be a shame to damage such a pretty planet, but surely these humans would see reason. After all, what choice did they really have? Ambassador Kethvar stood on the bridge of the diplomatic cruiser Harmonious Purpose, watching the primitive Terra 3 system grow larger on the main display. 2 escort frigates flanked his vessel, their elegant curves reflecting the light of the system's single yellow star. Such a lonely place, commented his aide, a young hegemony officer named Silketh. Only 1 star and such a small one. How can intelligent life develop in such isolation? Kethvar's compound eyes studied the tactical display. Isolation breeds aggression, he replied. Without proper guidance from advanced species, primitives tend to turn on each other. You can see the evidence right there. The display showed scattered objects throughout the system. Space stations, mining platforms, and what appeared to be defensive installations. Far more than their intelligence had suggested. Sir, called the navigation officer. We're detecting multiple artificial structures, many more than expected. Probably mining equipment, Kethvar said dismissively. Primitives always strip mine their systems before learning proper resource management. The Harmonious Purpose and her escorts moved deeper into the system, heading toward the 3rd planet where the humans lived. Their sensors detected hundreds of artificial objects, satellites, stations, and structures that defied easy classification. Sir, the communications officer's voice carried a note of confusion. We're being scanned. Scanned? Kethvar's mandibles clicked in amusement. By what? Their primitive sensors couldn't possibly detect us at this distance. The scans are very sophisticated, sir. Multiple frequencies, quantum resonance mapping, even some techniques I don't recognize. Before Kethvar could respond, the communications board lit up with an incoming transmission. The main screen flickered and resolved into the image of a human female wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. Her hair was gray, her face lined with age, but her dark eyes were sharp and alert. "Alien vessels," the human said in accented but clear galactic standard. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Space Navy. You have entered Sol system space without authorization. State your intentions." The bridge fell silent. The human had spoken in perfect galactic standard, a language that should have been completely unknown to them. Kethavar recovered first, activating the return transmission. "Greetings, primitive creature. I'm Ambassador Kethavar of the Galactic Union. We come bearing the gift of civilization to your backward species." Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. "I see, and what does this gift entail?" "You will be granted the honor of serving as a protectorate species under galactic law. Your people will be relocated to appropriate facilities where they can contribute to galactic civilization through labor and service. In return, you will receive protection, guidance, and the opportunity to learn from your betters." The human admiral was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was carefully neutral. "And if we decline this generous offer?" Kethavar's mandibles spread in what he thought was a reassuring gesture. "Decline? Why would you decline? We offer you a chance to rise above your primitive origins, to become part of something greater than your small, violent world. Because," Admiral Chen said simply, "we prefer to remain free." "Free?" Kethavar laughed, the sound translating as a harsh clicking through the communicator. "Free to destroy yourselves with your primitive weapons? Free to waste your lives in pointless conflicts? Free to remain ignorant of the wonders of the galaxy? That is not freedom, that is foolishness." Behind Admiral Chen, other humans moved with purposeful efficiency. Kethavar noticed they all wore similar uniforms and carried themselves with military bearing. These weren't the scattered, disorganized primitives his intelligence had described. "Perhaps we should meet in person," Admiral Chen suggested. "Your vessels can dock with Ceres Station. It's our primary diplomatic facility in the outer system." "Dock?" Kethavar's aide whispered. "Sir, our intelligence reports indicated they had no significant space infrastructure." The tactical display updated, showing a massive structure orbiting the system's asteroid belt. Ceres Station was huge, easily 10 times the size of a standard galactic outpost. Its design was utilitarian rather than elegant, but it bristled with communication arrays, docking bays, and what looked suspiciously like weapon systems. "How long has that been there?" Kethavar demanded of his intelligence officer. "According to our sensors, at least 50 years, sir. But that's impossible. Our deep space surveys showed no significant construction in this system." Admiral Chen seemed to read his confusion. "We've been aware of galactic civilization for quite some time, Ambassador. We've been listening to your communication, studying your technology, and preparing for eventual contact." "Listening to our communications?" Silketh gasped. "But our quantum encryption is unbreakable." "Your encryption is very good," Chen admitted. "It took our computers nearly 15 years to crack it. But we're patient learners." Kethavar felt the first stirring of unease. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. Primitive species were supposed to be awed by their arrival, not calmly discussing decades of espionage. "You claim to have been studying us," he said. "Then you know the futility of resistance. You've seen our weapons, our ships, our capabilities. Surely you understand that defiance is pointless." "We've seen your capabilities in action against other primitive species," Chen agreed. "And we've developed appropriate countermeasures." "Countermeasures?" Kethavar's laughter was sharp and dismissive. "What could you possibly develop that could threaten ships protected by quantum shields and armed with stellar-grade plasma weapons?" Admiral Chen smiled, and Kethavar realized with growing alarm that it was not a friendly expression. "Would you like a demonstration?" Before Kethavar could respond, his tactical officer called out in panic. "Sir, multiple contacts appearing on sensors. They're everywhere." The main display switched to a tactical view that made Kethavar's blood run cold. Dozens of human vessels were emerging from what appeared to be empty space. They were massive, easily twice the size of his diplomatic cruiser, and their design was unlike anything in the galactic database. These weren't the sleek, elegant curves of civilized spacecraft. These were angular, brutal-looking vessels that seemed designed for only one purpose: war. Their hulls bristled with arrays that could only be weapon systems, and their engines glowed with the harsh light of fusion fires. "How?" Silketh whispered. "How did they hide so many ships?" "Stealth technology," Admiral Chen explained calmly. "Another gift from studying galactic civilizations. We noticed that most of your sensors are designed to detect energy signatures and quantum disturbances. Very sophisticated, very effective against conventional drives, less effective against ships running on minimum power in carefully calculated orbits. The human fleet was positioning itself in a perfect sphere around the 3 galactic vessels. Every angle was covered, every escape route blocked. This is an act of war," Kerthvar declared, trying to inject authority into his voice despite the fear clawing at his chest. "No," Admiral Chen replied. "This is a negotiation. You came here with 3 military vessels and demanded our surrender. We're simply ensuring you understand that we're negotiating from a position of strength." "Position of strength?" Kerthvar forced his mandibles into a dismissive gesture. "You have numbers, I'll grant you that. But your primitive weapons cannot penetrate our shields, and our plasma cannons can destroy your crude vessels with ease." "Perhaps we should test that theory," Admiral Chen said quietly. "All human vessels, weapons hot. Target the escort ships. Prepare to demonstrate the effectiveness of kinetic bombardment against quantum shielding." Alarms began wailing on the bridge of the Harmonious Purpose. The tactical display showed dozens of human weapon systems locking onto his escort frigates. "Wait," Kerthvar called out. "There's no need for violence. We can discuss this reasonably." "I thought you said our weapons were primitive and ineffective," Admiral Chen observed. "Surely you're not concerned about a demonstration." The human admiral's image leaned forward slightly. "Ambassador Kerthvar, let me make something clear. Humanity has spent the last 50 years preparing for this moment. We've studied every galactic conflict, analyzed every weapon system, and developed specific countermeasures for every threat we might face. We know exactly what your ships can do, and more importantly, we know exactly how to stop them." She paused, letting her words sink in. "So I'm going to make you a counteroffer. Turn your ships around, return to your galactic union, and inform them that humanity declines their generous offer of servitude. In exchange, we won't demonstrate just how effective primitive weapons can be against advanced technology." Kerthvar stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. This was impossible. Primitive species didn't behave this way. They didn't have fleets of warships lying in ambush. They didn't hack galactic communications or develop stealth technology, but the evidence was right there on his sensors. Dozens of human warships, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything he'd expected to face. What do you want?" he asked finally. Admiral Chen's smile returned, but this time it held a hint of warmth. "To be left alone. To develop as we choose. To make our own decisions about our future." Ambassador Kerthvar tried to maintain his dignity as he responded to Admiral Chen's ultimatum. His mandibles clicked nervously, but his voice remained steady through the universal translator. "Admiral, you are making a grave mistake. These threats might work on other primitive species, but we represent the full might of the Galactic Union. Your crude weapons and stolen technology cannot match millions of years of advanced development." On the tactical display, the human warships maintained their positions around the 3 galactic vessels. Kerthvar noticed with growing unease that the human ships showed no energy signatures typical of charging weapons. Whatever they were using for armament, it didn't register on conventional sensors. "Perhaps a small demonstration would be educational," Admiral Chen said calmly. "For both of us." She turned to someone off-screen and spoke in what Kerthvar's translator identified as English, the human's primary language. "Signal the Yorktown. Tell Captain Rodriguez to target the asteroid at coordinate 77 Mark IV. Single projectile. Minimum charge." Kerthvar's intelligence officer quickly located the target, a small asteroid roughly 2 kilometers in diameter, drifting in the outer regions of the system. "Sir, why are they targeting empty space?" Before anyone could answer, one of the human warships, a massive, angular beast designated Yorktown, shifted slightly. A section of its hull that had appeared to be sensor equipment suddenly revealed itself as something else entirely. The weapon that fired was unlike anything in the galactic database. There was no energy discharge, no plasma bolt, no visible beam. Instead, something small and metallic streaked away from the human ship at an incredible velocity. "Projectile weapon," Silketh said dismissively. "Probably explosive-tipped. Primitive, but I suppose it might damage unshielded targets." The projectile reached the target asteroid in less than 3 seconds. When it struck, the result was spectacular. The entire 2-kilometer rock simply disappeared in a flash of vaporized matter and superheated plasma. Where the asteroid had been, only expanding clouds of debris remained. The bridge of the harmonious purpose fell silent. Silketh's compound eyes were fixed on the display, watching the debris cloud expand. That's not possible. It was just a kinetic projectile. Tungsten steel composite, Admiral Chen explained helpfully, fired at approximately 12% of light speed. The kinetic energy alone is equivalent to several fusion warheads. No explosives necessary. Kethvar's tactical officer was frantically running calculations on his console. Sir, the energy requirements for that acceleration, it should be impossible. The power needed would require the entire output of a stellar reactor. Magnetic acceleration, Chen continued as if conducting a lecture. We call them railguns, though the technology is considerably more advanced than the name suggests. Each of our warships carries between 8 and 24 such weapons depending on class. The ambassador felt his legs weaken. He had seen weapons capable of destroying asteroids before. Most galactic warships carried planet crackers for dealing with hostile installations. But those weapons required enormous energy outputs, were detectable from system ranges away, and took time to charge and aim. The human weapon had fired instantly, with no detectable energy signature, and had delivered destructive force equivalent to strategic-grade weapons. Impressive, he managed to say. But surely you realize that our quantum shields can deflect such attacks. Your projectile weapons cannot penetrate modern defensive systems. Admiral Chen's smile was patient, almost pitying. Ambassador, your shields work by deflecting energy. Plasma, lasers, particle beams, even directed electromagnetic pulses. They're designed to handle energy-based attacks. She gestured toward the display showing the debris cloud. That projectile had mass. Quite a lot of mass, actually, moving at relativistic speeds. Your shields might slow it down, but they can't stop it entirely. Basic physics. You're wrong, Silketh protested. Our shields have deflected stellar matter. They've turned aside solar flares and cosmic radiation, all of which were energy phenomena, Chen replied calmly. Tell me, have you ever tested your shields against solid matter moving at significant fractions of light speed? The silence on the bridge was answer enough. Kethvar tried to regain control of the situation. Even if your claims are true, you have perhaps 50 ships. The Galactic Union has thousands of vessels, billions of warriors. You cannot fight the entire galaxy. We're not trying to fight the entire galaxy, Admiral Chen said. We're trying to have a conversation. But it seems you're not ready to listen yet. She turned away from the screen again. Signal all ships. Ambassador Kethvar apparently needs a more convincing demonstration. Target the escort vessels. Fire on my command. No, Kethvar shouted, his composed facade finally cracking. Those ships have crews aboard. Then you'd better order them to withdraw beyond the range of our weapons, Chen replied. You have 30 seconds. The tactical display showed dozens of human weapon systems locking onto the 2 escort frigates. Unlike galactic targeting systems which painted targets with energy beams, the human locks were purely passive and there was no way to detect them until it was too late. Captain Veltar, Captain Nixon, Kethvar called desperately to his escort commanders. Withdraw immediately. Get beyond range of their weapons. Sir, what range should we withdraw to? Captain Veltar asked. Our sensors can't determine the effective range of their systems. Just go! Kethvar snapped. Maximum speed, random evasive patterns. The 2 escort ships immediately began accelerating away from the human fleet, their sleek hulls gleaming as they pushed their quantum drives to maximum output. They were fast, capable of crossing solar systems in hours, outrunning most known weapons. Admiral Chen watched their retreat with professional interest. 15 seconds to maximum range, she announced calmly. The fleeing galactic ships continued accelerating, now several light minutes away from the human fleet. At that distance, conventional weapons would take minutes to reach their targets, plenty of time for evasion. 10 seconds. Sir, Kethvar's sensor officer called out. They're at maximum sensor range. There's no way their weapons can reach this far. 5 seconds. Admiral Chen raised her hand. Fire! The human ships fired simultaneously. Dozens of projectiles streaked away at velocities that made the previous demonstration look slow. The weapons didn't fire in the direction of the fleeing ships, instead they seemed to fire at empty space. They missed, Silketh exclaimed. They're firing at nothing. 3 seconds later, both escort frigates simply ceased to exist. One moment they were racing away at maximum speed. The next they were expanding clouds of superheated plasma and twisted metal. How? Kethavar whispered. Predictive targeting, Admiral Chen explained. Our computers calculated their likely positions based on their acceleration curves and evasive patterns. The projectiles were fired to intercept them along their projected flight paths. The ambassador stared at the empty space where his escorts had been. Seasoned warships protected by the best shields galactic technology could provide, crewed by experienced officers, destroyed as easily as the asteroid had been. The crews, he managed to say, were given the opportunity to withdraw beyond our weapons range. Chen replied, her voice gentler now. I'm sorry for the loss of life, Ambassador, but you seemed determined to test our capabilities. She leaned forward in her chair. Let me be very clear about something. Those ships were destroyed by our smallest warship-grade railguns. Each of our battleships carries weapons considerably more powerful. Our orbital defense platforms around Earth mount guns that could punch holes through moons. Kethvar felt the weight of understanding settling on his shoulders. You're not primitive at all. No, we're not, Chen agreed. We're different. We developed along different lines, pursued different technologies, made different choices. Your people mastered energy manipulation, plasma weapons, quantum shields, stellar engineering, very impressive achievements. She gestured at the tactical display showing the human fleet. We mastered matter manipulation, material science, kinetic weapons, fusion drives, predictive computing. Also impressive in its own way, but why? Kethavar asked desperately. Why develop weapons of such power? Why prepare for war instead of peace? Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice carried a note of sadness. Because our history taught us that peace is something you have to be strong enough to keep. Because we've learned that freedom is never freely given. It has to be earned and defended. She stood up from her command chair. We've been listening to galactic communications for 50 years, Ambassador. We've heard the stories of the conquered worlds, the uplifted species that became slave races, the primitive civilizations that vanished into galactic work camps. We decided that wouldn't be our fate. The human admiral moved closer to the screen. We don't want war with the Galactic Union. We want trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation. But we want it as equals, not as subjects, and we're prepared to defend that position with whatever force is necessary. Kethvar looked at the tactical display one more time, seeing the dozens of human warships surrounding his vessel, each one carrying enough firepower to level cities. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Representatives from dozens of worlds filled the crystal chamber on Nexus Prime, their various forms agitated in ways specific to their species. The normally orderly seating arrangement had dissolved into clusters of worried beings whispering urgently among themselves. General Thok's massive form dominated the center of the chamber as he read from the report. Ambassador Kethavar had transmitted from the Terra 3 system. His rocky voice carried clearly through the universal translators, but the words seemed impossible to believe. The escort frigates Stellar Dawn and Quantum Harmony were destroyed instantaneously by kinetic weapons firing at 12% of light speed. Thok continued reading. The projectiles penetrated quantum shielding through pure kinetic force, vaporizing both vessels despite evasive maneuvers at maximum range. Counselor Zixana's tentacles writhed in her water sphere. This has to be exaggeration. Fear makes witnesses unreliable. Surely primitive kinetic weapons couldn't penetrate military-grade shielding. That's what I thought, called out Counselor Pex from across the chamber, until I received reports from my trade vessels. The blue-skinned trader gestured and a holographic display appeared showing several commercial ships floating dead in space. 3 of my cargo haulers were intercepted at the edge of the Rigel system by human warships. The ships didn't open fire, didn't make threats. They simply appeared from nowhere, demanded to inspect the cargo and disappeared again. Inspected for what? Asked someone from the back. Weapons, advanced technology, anything that might be destined for military use against human space. They were very polite about it, but very thorough, and very clear that any attempt to supply weapons to forces planning to attack humanity would be met with immediate destruction. General Thok's compound eyes fixed on the trader. How many ships? 12 that we could detect. Our sensors indicated there might have been twice that many using stealth systems, all of them larger than anything in our merchant fleet. The chamber erupted in frightened chatter. If the humans were already conducting interdiction operations in neutral space, it meant their fleet was larger than anyone had imagined. Order, General Thok's voice boomed through the chamber. We will address this crisis systematically. He activated the central holographic display showing a tactical map of the local galactic region. What do we know about human military capabilities? Science advisor Colmex of the research cast stepped forward. The tall, thin being's multiple arms gestured at the display as data points began appearing. Based on Ambassador Kethvar's report and subsequent observations, we can confirm several disturbing facts. The display zoomed in on human space, showing the Sol system and surrounding stars. Red dots began appearing at various locations. Human warships have been detected in 17 different systems over the past 10 rotations. They appear to be conducting reconnaissance and establishing some form of perimeter defense. How many ships? Thok demanded. Conservative estimates suggest at least 200 vessels, possibly more. They seem to operate in small squadrons, rarely more than 6 ships together. This makes accurate counting difficult. Counselor Yilmesh of the Psychic Collective raised her ethereal hands. Have we attempted psychic contact? Perhaps we can understand their intentions through mental communication. Attempted and failed, Colmex replied. Human minds appear to be naturally resistant to psychic intrusion. Several of our most skilled telepaths reported severe discomfort when trying to establish contact, describing human thoughts as sharp and hostile to outside influence. This news sent another wave of unease through the chamber. Psychic species had always held an advantage in diplomacy, able to sense intentions and emotions even when words deceived. If humans were naturally resistant to such abilities, it eliminated one of the Council's most reliable tools. General Thok studied the tactical display with growing concern. What about their technology? Can we counter it? Colmex's hesitation was telling. Their kinetic weapons appear to use magnetic acceleration, combined with some form of gravimetric focusing. The projectiles achieve velocities we thought impossible, without massive power requirements. Our best estimates suggest they've developed some form of zero-point energy manipulation. Zero-point energy? The exclamation came from several council members simultaneously. Zero-point energy was theoretical, the vacuum energy that existed in empty space. If humans had learned to harness it, they had access to essentially unlimited power. It would explain their ability to accelerate such massive projectiles to relativistic speeds. Colmex continued. It would also explain how their ships can maintain stealth while operating such powerful systems. Ambassador Kethvar's image appeared on the communications screen. Broadcasting from his ship still held in human space, his normally composed demeanor was completely gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. Honored Council, he said, his voice shaking. I must report further developments. The humans they've begun advancing into galactic space. The chamber fell silent. General Thok leaned forward in his massive chair. Explain. Human fleets have established positions in the Wolf, Barnard, and Proxima systems. They're not attacking anyone, but they're clearly marking territory. Any vessel that approaches their positions is, politely but firmly, escorted away. The tactical display updated, showing human positions expanding outward from the Sol system like a growing sphere of influence. They weren't just defending their home world, they were creating a buffer zone. Furthermore, Kethvar continued, they've begun broadcasting on all galactic frequencies. Their message is being transmitted in every known language simultaneously. What message? Thok demanded. Admiral Chen's image replaced Kethvar's on the screen. Her calm demeanor was unchanged, but her words carried across the galaxy with the weight of absolute conviction. To all civilized species of the Galactic Union, she began, humanity extends greetings and an offer of peaceful cooperation. We wish to establish diplomatic relations, engage in mutually beneficial trade, and share scientific knowledge for the betterment of all sentient life. Several council members relaxed slightly. Perhaps this crisis could be resolved diplomatically after all. However, Chen continued, and the word fell like a hammer, humanity will not accept protectorate status, colonial administration, or any form of subjugation. Any attempt to impose such conditions will be met with appropriate defensive measures. The image shifted to show human warships, not the handful that had confronted Kethvar, but hundreds of them. massive vessels that dwarfed anything in the galactic fleet. Their angular hulls bristling with weapon systems that violated every convention of civilized warfare. These vessels represent a fraction of humanity's defensive capability, Chen announced. Each one is equipped with kinetic weapons capable of penetrating any known shielding system. Each one carries enough firepower to sterilize continents, and each one is crewed by humans who have spent their entire lives preparing to defend their freedom. The display showed human ships moving through space in perfect formation, their fusion drives creating trails of nuclear fire. They moved with a coordination and precision that spoke of decades of training and preparation. "We do not seek war," Chen concluded, "but we are prepared for it. We invite the Galactic Union to choose peace and partnership, but if you choose conflict, you will discover why humanity survived and thrived on a world where everything tried to kill us for millions of years." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Finally, Counselor Zixana spoke in a whisper that carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "How many of them are there?" Colmex consulted his data displays. Approximately 8 billion on their homeworld, with another few million scattered through their system. Not a large population by galactic standards. "Then how can they field such a massive fleet?" demanded Counselor Pex. "Automation," came the answer from an unexpected source. The voice belonged to Trader Captain Yexali, whose merchant vessel had been one of those inspected by human ships. "When they boarded my ship, I saw their crew, half the size of a comparable galactic vessel, but every system was automated. Their computers handled tasks that would require dozens of specialists on our ships." General Thok's expression was grim. "So a smaller population can maintain a larger fleet because they've removed the biological component from most operations." "It gets worse," Captain Yexali continued. "Their manufacturing capability appears to be almost entirely automated as well. I detected massive industrial complexes throughout their system, all operating with minimal biological oversight. They can probably build ships faster than we can crew them." The implications settled over the council like a dark cloud. Humanity wasn't just militarily superior. They had the industrial capacity to maintain that superiority indefinitely. "What do we do?" The question came from Counselor Yilmesh, but it echoed the thoughts of everyone in the chamber. General Thok was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical display showing human positions expanding outward from their home system. Finally, he spoke with the weight of military experience. "We negotiate," he said simply. "We negotiate, and we hope they're as interested in peace as they claim to be." 3 months after first contact, the great crystal chamber of the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime looked very different. The elegant circular seating arrangement had been expanded to include a new section, a cluster of angular, functional chairs that looked distinctly out of place among the flowing, artistic designs favored by galactic architecture. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez sat comfortably in one of those chairs, her dark eyes taking in the assembled representatives of dozens of species. Unlike the formal diplomatic robes worn by most council members, she wore a simple but well-tailored suit in deep blue, with only a small pin on her lapel showing the flag of the Terran Federation. General Thok called the session to order with his massive stone hands. Since the human crisis, he had effectively taken control of the council's military and diplomatic functions. The previous leadership had been quietly reassigned to less critical positions. "The council recognizes Ambassador Rodriguez of the Terran Federation," Thok announced, his gravelly voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Rodriguez stood and activated a holographic display showing star charts of the local galactic region. Blue markers indicated human-controlled space, which had stabilized at a roughly spherical region encompassing 27 star systems around Sol. "Fellow council members," she began, her voice calm and professional, "I'm pleased to report that the integration of human space into the broader galactic community continues smoothly. Trade agreements have been finalized with 16 different species. Cultural exchange programs are underway with 8 worlds, and our joint research initiatives are producing promising results." Counselor Pex leaned forward in his floating chair. "The trade agreements have been eye-opening. Human medical technology is decades ahead of galactic standards in several areas." "We're happy to share," Rodriguez replied. "Our nanotechnology research has benefited enormously from galactic quantum theory. The exchange has been mutually beneficial. What she didn't mention was that humanity was very selective about which technologies they shared. Medical advances, computational systems, and material science flowed freely to their new trading partners. Weapons technology, industrial automation, and anything related to their kinetic weapons remained strictly classified. Science advisor Colmax activated his own display, showing research data from the joint projects. Human contributions to the galactic database have been substantial. Their approach to physics is radically different from our own, but remarkably effective. The display showed several breakthrough technologies that had emerged from human-galactic collaboration. New forms of medicine that combined human nanotechnology with galactic energy manipulation, computer systems that merged quantum processing with human artificial intelligence, materials that were stronger than anything previously known. However, Colmex continued with obvious reluctance. There are areas where human knowledge far exceeds our own, and they have been reluctant to share. Ambassador Rodriguez smiled politely. Some technologies have military applications. I'm sure the Council understands our need to maintain defensive capabilities. General Thok's compound eyes fixed on her. Speaking of defensive capabilities, our sensors have detected significant construction activity in human space. New installations, expanded fleets. Are you preparing for war? We're always prepared for war, Rodriguez replied matter-of-factly. It's served us well so far. But the construction you're observing is primarily civilian infrastructure, shipyards, research stations, habitat construction. Humanity is expanding, General, but we're expanding peacefully. She gestured at the star chart and new markers appeared showing human colonies and outposts. We've established settlements in 12 systems, all previously uninhabited worlds. We're not displacing anyone or claiming occupied territory. Counselor Zixana's tentacles writhed nervously in her water sphere. The speed of your expansion is concerning. Most species take centuries to establish significant extrasolar colonies. Most species don't have our industrial capacity, Rodriguez pointed out. Automated manufacturing makes large-scale construction projects much more feasible. What she didn't mention was that humanity's expansion was as much military as civilian. Every new colony came with defensive installations, and human fleet strength had more than doubled since first contact. The galaxy was a dangerous place and humans believed in being prepared. Which brings us to the current crisis, General Thok said, his voice heavy with concern. The Devourer incursions from the galactic rim. The holographic display shifted to show the outer edges of galactic space, where red markers indicated the positions of an aggressive species that had been expanding inward for several years. The Devourers were a machine intelligence that consumed entire worlds to fuel their expansion, and they had been steadily overwhelming galactic defenses. 3 more systems have gone silent this month, Thok continued. Our fleets are being pushed back on all fronts. The Devourers seem to adapt to our weapons faster than we can develop new ones. Rodriguez studied the tactical display with professional interest. What countermeasures have you tried? Plasma bombardment, quantum disruptors, stellar manipulation, Colmex listed. Nothing has been effective for more than a few engagements. Their technology adapts too quickly. Have you tried kinetic weapons? Rodriguez asked innocently. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew that kinetic weapons were humanity's specialty, and everyone suspected that human kinetic technology was far more advanced than they had demonstrated. General Thok spoke carefully. The Galactic Union would be grateful for any assistance humanity might provide in this crisis. I'm sure something could be arranged, Rodriguez replied, though we would need full access to your intelligence on Devourer capabilities, technology, and tactics. And any joint operations would need to be under human military command. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Placing galactic forces under human command was unprecedented, but the alternative was watching entire sectors fall to the Devourers. What exactly are you proposing? Asked Councillor Yilmesh. Rodriguez activated a new display showing human fleet positions. Joint task forces combining galactic and human vessels. Galactic ships provide energy-based support. Shields, sensors, communication relays. Human ships provide primary offensive capability. The display showed simulated battle formations that looked nothing like traditional galactic naval doctrine. Human warships formed the core of each formation, their brutal angular shapes surrounded by the elegant curves of galactic vessels providing support. Our Analysis suggests that Devourer adaptation protocols are designed to counter energy-based weapons, Rodriguez continued. Kinetic weapons operating at relativistic speeds should be much harder for them to adapt to, since the laws of physics don't change. General Thok studied the proposed formations with obvious interest. You believe your weapons would be effective against them? I believe our weapons would be effective against anything, Rodriguez replied with quiet confidence. The question is whether the Council is willing to accept human military doctrine in exchange for human military support. Another uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. Human military doctrine was notoriously aggressive, focused on overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. It was effective, but it was also fundamentally different from the carefully restrained approach favored by galactic civilization. Counselor Pex finally broke the silence. What would human command mean in practical terms? Human admirals would have final authority over tactical decisions, Rodriguez explained. Galactic officers would retain command of their own vessels, but overall battle strategy would be determined by human commanders. We've studied the Devourer threat extensively, and we believe we understand how to defeat them. She paused, letting her words sink in. But it has to be done our way. Galactic military doctrine is designed for conflicts between civilized species who follow certain rules. The Devourers don't follow any rules except survival and expansion. Neither do humans when survival is at stake. General Thok was quiet for several minutes, clearly weighing the implications. Finally, he spoke with the authority of his military experience. The Council will consider your proposal. In the meantime, would humanity be willing to provide a demonstration of your capabilities against Devourer technology? Rodriguez smiled, and this time it was genuinely warm. General, we've been waiting for you to ask. Admiral Chen has been preparing a task force specifically for anti-Devourer operations. The holographic display shifted to show a human battle fleet unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The ships were larger than previous human vessels, their hulls covered in additional armor and bristling with weapon systems. At the center of the formation was a massive dreadnought that dwarfed everything around it. The TFS Indomitable, Rodriguez announced, our newest battleship designed specifically for operations against adaptive enemies. She mounts our most advanced kinetic weapon systems and carries enough firepower to crack continents. Colmex's multiple arms gestured frantically at his data displays. The energy requirements for those weapons, how is it possible? 0-point energy manipulation, Rodriguez admitted. We've learned to tap into the vacuum energy that exists everywhere in space.